Hello, welcome to Crownsman Energy. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Joining me today is Julie Wiseman and Adesua Eigbe. Both of you, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Hi, Jared. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you again, Adesua. And Julie, welcome. This is the first time doing an interview with us, so welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, happy to be here.
Um, Julie, I want to start with you because you're the VP of Operations, and I just want to give the audience sort of a sense before we switch over to the advertisement of just who TCI is.
Sure, Jared. So, really, Total Combustion at the root of it is a waste gas incineration company that's focused on really reliable and easy to use equipment in the field. So, what we've sought to do for the past 20 years is engineered for simplicity so that it does what it needs to do and field operators are happy with us in the field.
Okay. I'm going to hand it over to the but so I kind of wanted to get your role because you are the sales engineering manager, and I think I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. You have an engineering background, so just sort of unpack your role within the company, and then sort of that'll pivot into what we'll be focusing on the technical aspects.
Absolutely. As the sales engineering manager, I know quite a mouthful. Um, I like to think of myself as a trusted advisor. So I don't want to sell you anything that doesn't fit your application or is not going to lead to the success of your project as a whole. And so my role at TCI is to find out what your projects are, what you're looking to do, and advise you into what would work as pairs with TCI equipment. On the engineering side, I will collect a lot of different information, technical information of what your specifications are so that I can design an equipment to remove the complexity while it's on site.
And I know I hope we get a chance to kind of unpack some examples of that because it's one of these things that if you're from the outside looking in, it can actually be a little confusing. So I'm looking forward to that. Before we do that, I have to hand it over to Gowdy, who will give a shout out to our many advertisers today.
Okay, so first up, we have Holly Frontier Lubricants and Specialties, which includes the Petro-Canada Lubricants brand. Petro-Canada Lubricants products and services are proven to maximize equipment, performance, productivity, and overall savings. From heavy-duty engine oils to hydraulic fluids, automatic transmission fluids, and gear oils and greases, Petro-Canada Lubricants is committed to delivering innovative solutions that deliver value and keep businesses moving. They have dedicated technical expertise, knowledge, and know-how to help customers in the mining industry operate smoothly with improved equipment, reliability, and performance. To learn more, you can visit them at lubricants.petro-canada.com, or you can give them a call at 1-866-335-3369 to arrange a call with one of their technical experts. Next up, we also have AutoSol. AutoSol solves the challenges of securely collecting and sharing data at scale for industrial SCADA automation environments. Whether your data is on the edge, on your server, or in the cloud, AutoSol can handle it. Regardless of the protocol, device, communication method, legacy asset, or HMI requirement, AutoSol tailors their historical, real-time, and edge-pulling engines to suit your needs. The proven platform sets the standard for data delivery with ultra-reliable access to isolated field devices. You can visit autosoln.com for more information, and you can also check out their interview on episode 30 of Crownsman Energy. Next up, we have Savannah Equipment. Are you working on pipelines, oil and gas projects, renewable energy, or LNG, and you need to save some cash? Well, Savannah Equipment has industrial pumps, electrical equipment, from motors to transformers, and even surplus pipe and much, much more available now. You can check out their full inventory at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. And next up, we have SolarSet. Introducing the SolarSet Fold, the new foldable frame solar system brings power to your residential and commercial property and can be shipped worldwide. Like all SolarSet products, the SolarSet Fold comes turnkey, pre-assembled, and is easily transported and installed. You can learn more about SolarSet Fold and their full line of amazing solar systems at solarset.com. And last but not least, we have PowerZone. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems no matter the challenge. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com.
Adesua, welcome back, everyone. I want to stay with you, and I want to just give sort of some layers to TCI. So, can you talk a little bit, just more about a little bit about the background, but sort of the the alternative to the venting, flaring, and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. In addition to what Julie said in the beginning, TCI has been around for over 20 years. And so that's 20 years of offering a clean combustion solution as an alternative to venting and flaring, which in turn helps our clients reduce their methane emissions. With our equipment, there's no smoke, no odor, no visible flame. And we had third party testing done on our equipment to prove our claim of over 99.9 combustion efficiency. Um, and we also source high quality materials, which means less servicing than maybe you're used to from our competitors. Our equipment is also simple to operate and reliable. I think that's TCI in a nutshell.
Does the well, and I wanted to quickly touch on this too, is that you do rent, like people can operate this equipment. When you said simple to operate, they can operate it themselves, or will you put field out on the people out into the field to set these up and operate them? How does that sort of setup work? I'll let either one of you answer that.
I think that depends on the application. Now, typically for well site or well jobs, we can operate, but a lot of times, a lot of companies have maybe their testing crews available because they're doing a lot of well testing. And so we just have to budget in time to train their staff
I see.
to operate the rental equipment. Also, when you purchase an equipment from us, we are dedicated to training you to ensure that when you're using it, you can see that it's designed for ease of use and it's also ensuring the success of your project. Now, with different applications, for instance, with the pipeline jobs, those are a little bit different because maybe they're trying to blow down or odorize lines. And typically, this is with natural gas distribution companies or midstream companies. A lot of times, they don't want to have to figure out what to do and how to turn up or turn down the equipment. So we provide manpower to operate the equipment so that it's really um, ensuring success for them.
Um, Julie, I know you have. I mean, what is your reach? I mean, you're servicing in certainly into the U.S. and Canada. Do you go as far as global, or is it within sort of the U.S. Canada?
We have sold units all over the world.
Okay.
So practically every continent, I believe that we've sold a unit into. We have sent rental equipment overseas. I think that the example that comes to mind is we did send a unit to New Zealand for them to operate from a well testing.
Okay.
They used it for a duration, but in terms of permanent applications, yeah, we've sold them all over the world.
So what I want to kind of go back to the history of the company then, because it has been around 20 years. And of course, the question I have is, were you on the forefront as a company of developing this technology and even having it as an option for customers 20 years ago when it started?
Yeah, great question, Jared. So, really, TCI was built through engagement with field operators. The founder spent a lot of time on site chatting with people at the field level, and he kind of over time recognized two main problems in that area. The first was kind of around the late 1990s. There was a lot of increasing public pressure against traditional candlestick flares.
Mm.
This was mostly in kind of rural acreage communities. Residents did not want to see the open flame, the black smoke, or any odor associated with flares in their fields. And this was forcing field operations teams at the time to seek out alternative solutions. So the second problem with that was that the current best practice or alternative to flare stacks at the time was refractory lined incineration equipment. Refractory incineration is great. It shows no visible flame, black smoke, or odor, which was fantastic for the residents living in the area. However, that equipment is and was and still is extremely delicate. It cannot handle instant startup or shutdown. They require lots of fuel gas. They're heavy, and they've been known to melt right on site if any rich gas gets introduced into the unit. All of which the founder continuously heard was a source of frustration at the field level.
You know what?
Um,
Frustration is actually right. The fact is like field operators have a tough job. They're constantly overseeing a lot of equipment. So then, like now, there's a desperate need for equipment that does not add problems for them. So when I say problems, I mean unscheduled downtime. So the founders sought a combustion solution that would be reliable and easy to use because he wanted to give the field operators one less thing to worry about.
Mm. So what can we talk a little bit about the design? It's kind of this upside down rocket looking thing. So can we talk a little bit about where what that design actually is? Especially for someone who's certainly a layman like myself.
Absolutely. When the founder realized that there were problems with the existing combustion design, um, and that design would not work, partially because the AER mandates on flaring within 500 meters of residences was in place, and because the existing refractory design, like Julie talked about, was a bit too complex, it was clear that for his option to be unique and to add value to operators, his design needed to kind of engineer the complexity out of combustion.
Mm.
Now, operators did not want any solution that was too complex because, and so his solution needed to be simple. So at the time, he sourced out durable materials for his stack design to find out what would work best. With operational issues the operators had with refractory line stack, he wanted a single line stack instead of the refractory bricks or refractory lining inside of a stack.
Mm.
And on-site stainless steel stacks handle fluctuation in temperatures, and they can handle liquid carryover better, which is where the refractory lined units kind of failed because they melted under those conditions.
Sorry, can you explain that a little bit? That liquid, again, for a layman like myself, that liquid carryover, what does that actually mean?
So when you're on a site and maybe you're doing frac flow back or doing some well jobs, sometimes you could have some oil or liquid carry over into the unit. And a lot of times this is very hot. And so for the refractory lined units, this would melt the refractory lining versus a stainless steel stack that can handle fluctuation in temperature and handle, so like when there was liquid carryover. So it kind of depends on the job. And I think the founder at the time realized that he was onto something because the clients preferred a cleaning bill at the end instead of a melted refractory line stack. And so they had to build that stack up again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what were they making the material with before? What would be a material that would be melted? Like brick? You said there was actually brick lining in some of these units, and then what would it be packaged? Like what was the material that would actually get melted?
So there's different kinds of refractory lining. It's just something that holds the heat inside of the stack, and that goes into what is needed for combustion. You need some sort of heat source, and so what they were looking for was a way to preserve the heat inside of the stacks. And so one of the options was brick. Now brick wouldn't melt, but there were other options because the brick is a lot of times very heavy.
Yeah.
So yes, so there's other options of what you can use for lining up the stack. Now those lining of the stack, depending on what it is, could melt into the stack if it got too hot. And so, like Julie said, it's very delicate.
So, Julie, I want to go a little bit about to the field testing on this. Then, I mean, that must have been. I mean, you're changing an industry, like just the simple fact of not having to use bricks, just eliminating that weight on these units. But can we talk a little bit about sort of the testing, the goals from the testing, and that whole process?
Absolutely. I think if we can just back up and highlight one more point
Sure.
that the founder also thought of in conjunction with stainless steel, The design for the stacks, as you can see, are kind of these rings. And the really cool thing about those was it was a concept out of the Suffield military base, actually.
Oh,
And it was centered around how to naturally draw in cooling air for high combustion efficiency. And they used it on battleships. So why it was important for battleships is that it's important that they maintain their uniform temperature, because any hot spots on the ship would be subjected to heat-seeking missiles. So it was that concept of the stack cooling design to eliminate hot spots that he also used in conjunction with stainless steel.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really cool way to think about the problem.
Right.
And then so he took the stainless steel and the kind of rocket ship design of the stacks that naturally drew in air and brought it to the field, and really had two goals that he set out to achieve. And the first was making sure that there was really high combustion efficiency. That would make sure that there was no flame, no smoke or odor showing for the residents. And the second goal was, through discussions over the years with field operators, he needed the solution to be extremely easy to operate. So, Adesua, do you want to break down what the very first trial looked like?
I could do that. The first unit was designed for 7 cubic meters per day. And at the time, it was trialed with Petro-Canada. There were some skeptical operators in the back, which is fair because they were used to flares and refractory line stacks. So the expectation was that it would not work. But to their surprise, it worked. And there was kind of a mindset shift in the type of equipment that would be used. The project offerings have since changed over the last 20 years.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit? I want to touch on that actually, the little bit about the sort of that first unit size, comparing it to what it's been scaled up to now.
Yeah, the equipment, like I said, it started off with 7 cubic meters per day. Now we handle everything from 50 cubic meters per day to 71,000 cubic meters per day. So that's about 71 deck. Now, these ranges are based on methane gas. Now, if you have other gas that is not just pure methane, then the ranges will change for you. We also built rental units because some clients only had need for units for a short period of time. And these rental units were mounted on trailers and hydraulic skids for easy access and setup.
And
Then
these
we
are bigger
built,
ones as well. Sorry, just to jump in.
yes,
These like big units, mobile units, as well as the smaller ones.
yes. So all the smaller units, even like the smaller units and the bigger units, were put on trailers.
Okay.
We built different sizes and different ranges, and they put it on trailers because we found that customers sometimes wanted the units for short period of time and to go on different locations. And so this helped make it easy for them to use.
Again, sorry for the layman questions, but why? What would be a couple scenarios where a client would only need it for a short period of time?
Oh, that's actually perfect. So we do work for pipeline midstream companies, and so a lot of times maybe they're trying to blow down the line, which would take a short period of time, maybe a couple hours, depending on what they're trying to do, or a couple days, and so they don't need a permanent install because they're just blowing down a section of line, and so they would use our unit for a short period of time. Then there's companies that are doing before they're putting their gas into their pipeline, they're doing maybe um, testing of the gas, and there could be a surge in flows of the volume, and so they just need the incinerator to handle excess gas before they put it in line. And so there's a lot of different applications, but these are a few of the applications that we've worked on.
I want to just highlight a couple because you sent me some pictures and I wanted to actually, again, someone in the industry might be able to see these and just know instantly. But for me, it's a little different. Like there's one where it's beside I'm going to say it's a stainless steel tank. And then it's sort of got a box around it. And I was just wondering what would that, and then there's another one where the unit is way up in the air. like on a tower. So I'm just wondering, could you highlight a couple of those pictures? We'll bring them up for the audience and just walk through what applications these are being used for, these units.
Yes, yes. So that goes back into the iteration of the different product offerings and the way we've changed and grown in the 20 years. We built platforms as we started working with clients who had sour gas and needed to put their units on a platform for good dispersion of the SO2 that would be emitted from the top of the stack. And then as Directive 39 started being enforced for benzene gas and benzene applications, so DHI applications, we put our units on a platform so they could meet those regulations. I think we built a range of stacks, platforms of heights of 6 to 9 meters. And then there were, when the units needed to go on platforms, we started building shrouds and enclosures, which is likely what you're talking about and what you've seen. Those different design iterations and knowledge we gained from the shrouds and enclosures then birthed the current enclosed combustor design. This was built because the AER was talking about units that could be closed spaced units. So units that could be 10 meters away from wells, tanks, and other equipment. So the enclosed combustor was built as per AEI design parameters to be able to combust a gas within reduced spacing lease or something.
Right.
Then we have the box style units, which is another unit that you could show up that we built to support different client varying layouts and site configurations.
I see. Okay. So, right, because even if it's within a certain distance of it, so the application could be the same of the unit, but because it's a different layout, then basically the supporting infrastructure around it has to be different around the unit.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, I gotta ask one more question about that one that's way up in the air. Again, we'll bring the picture up. Now, would that be an example of a fixed unit, or is someone bringing? I mean, that would be something that's fixed on that location, right? If you're actually
those typically are sour. So if it's way up in the air, that is a dead giveaway that's a H2S application. Maybe their waste gas has certain percentages higher than 1% H2S in it.
Okay.
And so for good dispersion, you need to place it at a height. And so you do some sort of dispersion analysis to find out what height that needs to be. And that would be where it'd be placed. And so typically that's a permanent install and not a rental install.
Okay, so we've talked some infrastructure discussion, the operation, what it does, but I want to and the units, but I get the sense there's more to it now. Is there sort of these value adds that have been developed over the 20 years that are now becoming sort of a mainstay offering of total combustion?
Yeah, absolutely. When the founder brought the units to trial, he had, two simple goals, which he was able to achieve. But as the products grew and developed and we got on more sites and more experience, we learned that there was some other operational upsides to utilizing our equipment. The first one that I can think of is the TCI's ability to naturally draw in air meant that operators would not have to source power or line up a generator to achieve maximum combustion efficiency. This was in stark contrast to refractory lined equipment that needed access to power to run their blowers or fans to achieve their combustion. The second benefit was stainless steel material allowed, and Adesua kind of touched on this, but I think it's worth kind of drawing a line under, but stainless steel allows operators to instantly start up the unit or shut the equipment down. And this was completely counter to refractory lined equipment that required a very slow and tedious pace of warming the equipment and cooling the equipment prior to it even being operable. So saving time for operators that could just get to work and get going. And another bonus was if any sort of safety or operational issues arose on site, you could just shut it off and shut down, versus a refractory, you'd have to slowly kind of weather the operational storm to get it to shut off.
Right.
The third upside that we did find was because this stack cooling design was a part of our process. It allowed operators to work on and around the unit while it was in operation without concerns of any radiant heat. So it wasn't like you had to just like avoid it at all costs type thing.
Okay, so as Julie was talking through those value adds, it came to my mind, do customers understand all these value adds and going through that process of choosing the right unit? Or is it still, 20 years in, but is there still a lot of sort of on the ground support and communication that needs to happen?
That's a great question, Jared. I wish we could rest on our laurels and just believe that they understand. I think a lot of times with customers, what they see is it works. I don't have to think about it. But when it doesn't work, then they realize all the value adds
Mm,
that they weren't getting. With what has happened in the industry, with a lot of new companies entering because of maybe the vent gas protocol or the mandates restricting flaring and such in certain areas, is that they're always looking for the low cost commodity option.
I
But then, when customers have used us, then they realize, oh, they service it in place. Oh, we don't have to worry about it. There's no downtime, etc. And so those value adds that Julie was talking about sometimes is something that they don't realize till maybe they try something else and then they want to come back and use a TCI equipment because they've had no problems with it. And I think honestly, these value adds for the people, our long-standing customers, is why they've stayed with us so long.
Well, and I look back at some of those pictures, and it looks for some of these, I would imagine for a rental unit, maybe it's not as complicated, if it's a sort of a short. But for some of these fixed units that you've got out in the field, there's infrastructure that needs to be around it and that sort of thing. So there must be a fair amount of support required to actually being able to put a unit into one of these locations.
Well, actually, for our rental or our purchase, we like to think of each job not as common, but as specific.
Okay.
Because your terrain is different, your needs are different, your timeline is different. And so if you think of it on a high level as just gas, then it seems like a common solution, an off the shelf solution should work. However, we found that one job is always different from the other. And so on the rental side, if a client is trying to odorize the line, or maybe they're pigging the line, those are very different
Mm.
needs of what they're looking to achieve. And so it's very different from maybe a client is trying to, maybe they have butane in a tank, or and they're trying to push through nitrogen or clean out the tank. So those are very different needs and different offerings. As such, we have to ask all those questions to be able to understand their needs and prep for something that would fit their application.
I would love to see some of that communication one day as they're trying to find. That's like I love that kind of stuff when you're trying to communicate a technical information, especially for me because I don't understand half of it. So it's great. The on the going kind of touching back to customers, their needs even changing. What's the process of, are people like trading in units? Do you like these rental units? Do they ever buy back units? Like what's that whole sort of that sort of the asset structure that you have arranged with customers?
Yeah, definitely, Jared. I think a source of pride for us is our commitment to buying back all our previously sold equipment. So, all you operators out there, if you have a TCI unit in your boneyard, we want to buy it back. So, please call me. And what that really highlights is, our commitment to putting out a reliable product that not only works in the field, but stems all the way from the materials we source to how we approach our relationships with our customers. So, yeah, absolutely. Buyback. Adesua, I think you can give a good example of a recent transaction we just did.
Exactly, kind of what you are saying. Call us, we will buy back the units. And so a recent buyback story is we actually had a client in the USA who was needing a unit back in 2014. The client had gas coming both from tanks and a separator, and they wanted one unit that would do both. And so we built them a dual inlet unit that could handle their high pressure gas from your separator. I think it was about 6,000 cubic meters per day, so about 6 deck, and a low pressure stream that was about 14 to maybe 28 cubic meters per day of gas. The unit had ignition system. It was powered by a solar panel. We even added features so that it could be automatically turned down because that was the application that they needed at the time. We also provided them with flame arresters as a fail-safe to protect their facility should anything happen. They used this unit for about 7 years, and that well got shut in, and it was in the boneyard. We got wind of this and we bought the unit. We brought it back to Canada. So I guess like what Julie was saying, we will buy back your units. We have a range of used units that we sell because they have a long lifespan, at least 15 years, right? And our equipment is so dependable, it holds its value. So we will always buy it back.
You know, someone's like looking out in their boneyard right now, being like, "Do we have one of these units?" the You've both touched on regulations a few times, and Julie, I think this is maybe for you, and then we can sort of discuss it. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, even are you both located in Alberta right now?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit, even in Alberta specifically, about how those regulations have changed? You've touched on it throughout talking about the units, but I kind of wanted to get a better understanding of that.
Yeah, of course. So, a couple years back, there was a major overhaul of some of the language and regulation with Directive 60. And it really came down to what was going to be the allowable vent volumes going forward. And what we found as these regulations started to come in place, that there's a ton of frustrated engineers who have a ton of pressure on how to make the best possible decisions in order to align with this upcoming regulatory change. And so we know how enticing it is to those in the purchasing department to seek out low cost. It's usually off the shelf combustion solutions, especially when their capital expenditure budgets are very restricted.
Mm-hmm.
However, TCI, as we mentioned before, is not an off the shelf solution. We know every job site conditions differ, so we don't treat your job as a one size fits all. We believe in taking the time to gather as many inputs as possible. So that would be flow rate, composition, pressure, gas, where the gas is coming from, so we can really understand the type of application, all the way to getting the exact LSD to determine sea level elevations. All of this is an effort to engineer and properly size the equipment for each individual job. For the client, what this means is that it results in equipment that is so simple and works and is reliable in the field.
Adesua, can you talk a little bit? Are there any examples that come to mind of somewhere where that process has been undertaking and it adds a certain level of value that you can't? Obviously, you're being featured, so I'll do a shameless plug where you can't get anywhere else.
Yes, I could definitely give you examples of why what Julie was saying matters in the long run. In fact, one of the units that we design and we sell is our TCI 80. This TCI 80 handles, about 350 cubic meters per day, based on methane gas, because all sizing and flow rate of the equipment needs to be paired or pegged against some composition. Currently, there's a lot of buzz in the market on these types of units because as producers, they're being encouraged to do and go more beyond the regulatory compliance on their vent volumes. And so they're typically allowed to vent a certain amount of gas. And now these regulations are saying these incentives are allowing them to do more, so that they can do more with those vent gas instead of just venting it. With the revamped vent gas protocol, they can generate some carbon offset credits, which they couldn't before. Because
Oh,
of this opportunity in the market, some competition is focusing on reduced pricing and not all equipment longevity or the not on the long-term service requirements on the field. But at TCI, generally, we service our equipment once a year. And when we call to book, they're typically like, oh, that thing, I don't ever think about it. Yes, it's working. Sure, you can come out. There's no issues. It's running fine. So that's
right.
typically what we hear. We actually take that as a compliment because that tells us that our approach to engineering the unit on the front end and making sure it's built to meet the needs on site means that on the back end, you can say the equipment just works and we don't have to think about it.
Mhm.
Now, we've also heard about the low cost combustion solution. And what we've heard is that the off the shelf solutions are known to be unreliable and they require a lot of maintenance in the field. So, what does that mean? That means that you have to deal with unscheduled downtime. And sometimes your operators are paid to sit around because the site is not running while you're waiting for a vendor to fix their unit. And these costs, they just add up.
Mhm.
So if you're a decision maker and you're focused only on the capex, like Julie was talking about, or the upfront cost of the unit, and that is your sole decision making for choosing a unit, one versus the other, I completely get it. You're trying to make great cost conscious decisions, and as such, we are within the acceptable budgetary range.
Right.
We're not outlandish, but we will not be the lowest price point on the onset. So you might be
On the
thinking,
onset.
I don't want to use TCI because of that. I would caution though that at some point in your chain of command in your company, I guarantee you this only because we've seen it happen time and time again. Someone is also caring about their operational budget,
Right.
the
Yeah.
unscheduled downtime, the operator displeasure, the headache your low cost option brings typically means unforeseen operational costs. That is their concern. So before you celebrate your cost saving win, just make sure that the field teams are fully prepped and then maybe they have a budget for the cost of these challenges resulting in downtime in the field.
It's what you're touching on is such an important it's such an important topic, and you laid it out very nicely. I know it from the production side. When we first started, you go, oh wow, that unit's only half the price, and about 3 months later, as you're fighting with it, you find out why it was half the price. And it's such a fine line, though. It's not an easy thing because you also can't buy your way out of all your issues either. You don't Paying more doesn't always fix the problem, right? And again, I guess I circle back to that. Is it Do a lot of customers need it laid out? Do they need to say do you have some sort of breakdown for them and say, okay, these are the onset costs here, but this would be an example if you go with like a less expensive unit. Do a lot of customers sort of need that walking through, or a high percentage of them pretty educated on how the differences that would break down in?
I think it depends on the customer that you're talking to. There's customers who have used our units and they love it and then they keep coming back.
Mm,
There are customers that have told me, I just want the cheapest candlestick option that is just going to burn, or I'm getting this unit. I don't care if it works. You know, we just like the cheapest thing out there. But a couple years in, they're calling us, hey, can you get us some units? And so that kind of testifies to the fact that, use us and then you'll know the difference, right?
right. Yeah.
And so with some people, sometimes you don't get the chance to explain all these different costs. But when they use you, there's a testament to why they keep coming back because it works so well. Their operators aren't complaining. Their operational budget isn't blown sky high. And so that's why people keep coming back to TCI.
Yeah, it's again, I would it's almost tempting to go, okay, can we break that down? But we'd be here a while if we did that. So I will move on from my curiosity. Um uh Julie, as we wrap up this interview, I are there some new developments or some things you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, there was a few other things, Jared, that we kind of wanted to chat about. One of the other things that we're extremely proud of at TCI is providing an ease of use solution. So as we had alluded to earlier, um, our trailer mounted equipment and even our permanent applications are set to be easy. And there's no better representation of that than our 18-year relationship with ATCO Gas and ATCO Pipelines.
Wow.
Adesua, wouldn't you agree?
I would definitely agree. In fact, I'll give you an example. We completed last summer for ATCO Gas. Essentially, they needed to replace a line that was installed in the 70s. The location was downtown Calgary, 9th Ave and 5th Street. The time frame was in the middle of the work week. And so maybe perhaps some people who are were walking past while we were doing work for ATCO.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, the job challenges were various, just the location and the time of day. They also needed us to complete it in a very short timeline, which makes the jobs even more challenging. But yeah, the tight spacing of the equipment needed to allow the work week traffic to continue on and transit and buses to continue zooming by.
Mhm.
And then also what was top of mind for our team was ensuring that the pedestrians and the general public that were walking around in that area could be there safely and continue on through their normal work days. So what we ended up doing is we sized it for what we call a TCI 3000 trailer mounted unit. Our technician arrived on site on time, and they actually erect the stacks using our truck batteries. So they were able to stand the stack. They set our outriggers, which go and support the trailer frame, and they're designed to work on uneven ground. And he was ready to run in 30 minutes. And why that's important is the ATCO project manager only had to really worry about our start time. They didn't have to line up a third party picker to stand and place the equipment. They certainly didn't need to order or arrange for rig matting. Lots of equipment needs rig matting to ensure that it's ground and stable. And they definitely didn't need to order a generator to run our blower or run a blower. As we alluded to before, our equipment achieves natural draft for our combustion, so no power was needed.
Now, the outcome for this job that Julie was alluding to was um, we safely purged the line in a 2-day window for ATCO. And this was with zero disturbance to the public. And that translates to less of a headache for the project manager. We've even worked right off of bike paths next to schools, even smack dab in the middle of residential communities with the same results because they don't see any smoke, no odor, there's no visible flame, and minimal noise. So they're not bothered, and so they have nothing to complain about.
So, Julie, I kind of touched on earlier asking, about that communication with customers, and Odessa sort of walked through it from a technical side. But can you sort of do it that R&D, or not the R&D side, sorry, the sort of that outreach side and that market research side that I know is part of your role with the company. Can you just sort of walk us through developments that you've had in that over the last year or so?
Sure. Yeah. No. One of the things I think a company that has been in the market for 20 years, like us, you start to jumble your value proposition in a lot of ways as you see competitors come in and they're all claiming to be this and that. And for us, we hired a marketing consultant that reached out to the market, our competitors, all our current and past clients to really understand two things. The first was really establishing what the market felt was our most valuable offering, and the second was what we bring the greatest value in. So what they heard time and time again is that we need to focus on really coincidentally what we're already doing and what we're already best at.
Mm.
And that is, as we've reiterated time and time again, having a reliable equipment that's engineered for simplicity and ease of use. And as we just touched on, not just setting and forgetting the equipment, we really care about the overall success of each and every job.
Hmm. It's a simple. It sounds simple when you say it, but I know as a company, and we talk about it within internally in our team as well, is there is always it's an easier thing to do to sort of chase after another message rather than continue to build on this thing that you already have that's so good, and then slowly sort of tack on other value adds, but always keeping this main thing that people really understand is the value that you bring to them. It's a tricky thing to do, as like you said, especially when you see competitors coming in and they're flashing everything around. And but I can imagine that from a customer communication perspective, is it sort of a relief as well, though, to go, oh, this is what that people want from us, what we're already good at.
Absolutely, because it's just authentic. It's who
Yeah.
we are, it's who our team is. So we're not trying to reach out for these new shiny messages
Yeah.
that the market that's in the market. We're just holding true to who we always have been.
Yeah, and now with that said, Adesua, I was actually hoping before we wrap up is that you could touch a little bit on that R&D side as well, because I do know that Total Combustion is continuing to sort of bring new values and new applications into the market.
Yes, actually, currently we are evaluating solutions that capture waste heat of our stacks to generate power. We're also trialing continuous emissions monitoring technology in our stacks. But at the end of the day, with whatever direction that we do take, we want to stay focused and stay true to providing products that are easy to operate and reliable on site. The last thing we want to do is provide a solution that is either tough to operate in the field or doesn't run consistently. So providing a solution that alleviates the problems of operators on site has always been and will always be at top of mind with TCI.
Right. I want to ask. I'm gonna split this question up because to you first, Julie, and then Adesua over to you. Is Julie the part to you is sort of you go to the history of the company, and then I like to try to find the heartbeat of a company, and every company has one. Like we just had a company on recently, and right in their mission statement was about making profits. They're very structured in that this is what we do, this is how we make money, and it was refreshing to see that sort of clarity. In talking to both, we've gone back and forth a little bit preparing for the show, so I've kind of gotten to know both you a bit. What to you is that sort of heartbeat of the company?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jared. So I think in conjunction to some of the things we covered earlier about the focus really being on reliability. So having equipment that we want back after years of working in the field. And then as highlighted with that ATCO example, ease of use. So having reliable equipment that's easy to use, ultimately to make field operations lives easier. I think the other thing to mention here is, and Adesua already touched on this, is we're not an off-the-shelf commodity. So we
Right.
don't just plop a unit down and walk away from our customers. We ask a ton of questions prior to the job, during the job, and post the job.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, and it's coming through and in this interview. And Adesua, I want to you from talking to you, I can see you get quite passionate about when you're talking about the technical aspects of the company. I guess you know and it does bring me to the question, sort of when did you sort of see, that you had the passion for not just total combustion, but just for the industry and these technical things and the engineering side of it? When did that sort of you realize, no, I like this stuff?
I think, well, my history has always been in the oil and gas industry. I've touched on consulting side and working with EPC companies. And while working with EPC companies, I also was working on waste gas
Mm.
and what to do and how to design those. I worked with environmental consulting companies on what to do with waste gas and what to do in general to help companies be cleaner. And so it was refreshing working on the vendor side of something to like working on solutions to actually solve problems. And that's what we do at TCI. We're actually in it for the success of your project. And one example, on the multitude of examples that we've talked about today, but especially to highlight what Julie was talking about of not an off-the-shelf solution, because we're in it for the success of your project. And that is the heartbeat of who TCI is that last year we worked for a longstanding client. And this client had 5 wells that they were trying to do something with simultaneously in central Alberta. And they wanted to leverage the flowback equipment on site as well as their testing crews, which is smart because their objective was to save time and reduce costs. Now, this client had pipeline infrastructure within reach, and the plan was to go inline. So even if you have pipeline close, you need this equipment because for them, they were worried about surge in gas flows. They needed TCI equipment on site because they wanted a means to handle any surge of gas that they couldn't put into the pipeline. TCI provided them with units that were sized based on the highest surge flow of the gas. So the job ended up requiring maybe 3 TCI dual stacks, dual 4800 stacks, and 2 TCI 10,000 skid mounted box units. And they wanted to have it rented for a 10-day window. As you can imagine, with these many trailers and skids, there's a lot of upfront planning and communication with maybe the completions engineer, the completions consultants, and the testing companies involved to ensure that the project is successful. And because we don't want to treat your job as common and bring any off-the-shelf solution, we wanted to know, are we dealing with an oil or gas well? We wanted to know the capacity of the gas and the heating value of the gas that they were projecting they were going to get. What does the site look like? Are there any overhead concerns so that we can provide the unit that would be placed in proper areas, or we can provide a unit that would not have issues with overhead concerns? We wanted to know who else is coming on site so that we can time our arrival with the time that is most convenient to you as a client. We also wanted to know what any potential setbacks you were anticipating. We wanted to know what the easiest access to site was or what the road conditions were so we can plan ahead of time. The delivery dates that you wanted the equipment out for. You wanted to know, did we have to train testing crews or would you want to use our technicians? And this is part of what makes me passionate about this because we're not a commodity. We don't just plop a unit out there like Julie was saying. We are looking at the project as a whole and how we fit into it and how we can help make your project a success. And I think I have no choice but to be passionate about this because I'm learning different ways to help client. And previously, which was also great, I learned how to size the equipment very well. Now I'm learning what to do about it, which is what we do at TCI.
Well, I will certainly say when people like both you are passionate and very genuinely believe in the company that they're representing, it makes my job very easy. So thank you to both of you. Hopefully we'll get you back on. It's one of these as it went on, I had to like stop myself from asking more questions because it was almost some of these sections could have gone for probably 20-25 minutes. So I hope I did some justice to TCI and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jared.
And thank you to the audience. Please keep on suggesting guests. Please keep watching and sharing out our content. It's not only supporting us, it's supporting the guests and the advertisers and all the to make this show happen. It's we've written out sometimes a list of all the companies and people that are involved in just one show, and it's a huge list. And it's all because of the support from you, the audience. So thank you very much. Thank you to Julie and Adesua for joining us and from Total Combustion for supporting the show. Please keep watching Crownsman Energy. I'm just the guest host today. Chad will be back on the next episode. And please keep watching. Talk to you soon.